Welcome to Issues in Focus. Today, we're going to discuss a topic that is important to everyone, water. Many people are not aware that the Great Lakes make up roughly 20% of all the planet's fresh surface water and 85% for North America. To discuss this topic, we have three special guests who have been instrumental in the fight to keep our greatest resource clean. State Representative Padama Kuppa.
Thank you so much. I am honored to be here. I represent the communities of Troy and Clawson in Oakland County. Troy is where I've lived for more than 20 years, and I'm very excited to talk about water and how important it is to all of us here in Michigan.
State Senator Stephine Chang.
Thanks so much for having me. I am really excited to be here. Love talking about water issues. I represent a large portion of Detroit and also downriver and have much of the riverfront. So have been working on water issues on that end, and then also issues of water affordability and shutoffs.
Liz Kirkwood, Executive Director for Flow of Water.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute honor to be here with the Senator and Representative and you. And there's nothing more that I love to talk about than water.
Representative Kuppa and Senator Chang, you have both been champions for water-related issues in the Michigan legislature. What kind of legislation are you working on that can address issues related to ensuring equal access to water in our state?
Well, I'm happy to talk a little bit and, just excited about this conversation and really hearing from everyone. I've been in the legislature for about 6 years now, and when I first came into office in 2015, one of the very first things that I started to work on was issues of water affordability. In June 2015, we actually put together a hearing at the state capitol to hear testimony, and we heard testimony from around 100 people. 100 people came. We heard testimony from many of them on water affordability issues and also the issues with Flint water. And that was actually at the time before we knew that there was lead in the water. So we've actually introduced numerous bills related to water shutoff protections to really protect vulnerable individuals, seniors, people with young children, moms who are breastfeeding, and other vulnerable individuals. And so we've also introduced legislation around water affordability plans, as well as just a whole host of billing issues. And it's something that I think has really been highlighted during this COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen just around the country and right here in Michigan, a lot of issues with water affordability. So I'm really pleased that we were able to get a bill passed to extend the moratorium on water shutoffs, because, when you talk about wearing a mask, social distancing, and washing your hands with water and soap, that's hard to do if you don't actually have access to water because you can't afford your water bill. So I'm really pleased that we were able to get that moratorium extended. We have much more work to do to continue that extension, and then also to really make sure that we're addressing long-term issues. And so we're talking with people every single week on this issue. The other area that I'll just briefly mention is because I have so much of the waterfront in Detroit and downriver, we've been really closely monitoring a lot of issues with some of you may remember in 2019, after Thanksgiving, there was a dock collapse at a contaminated site, and many of us were very worried about what could potentially happen there. And so as a result of all of that and a lot of research and working with various stakeholders, we put together 3 bills to try to make sure that we have a better handle on contaminated sites along our waterway, and to make sure that any type of spill into our water gets addressed immediately. So really excited about those bills as well.
Thank you for allowing us to expand on what legislation, but also the reason why we're here. So I want to talk a little bit about when I was campaigning back in 2018. The reason that I was motivated to run for office were two things. One is the concern around education and affordable public education, affordable college education, and ensuring that all children have access to opportunity. This is something that was really important to me. There were other issues like climate change. I think climate change is the greatest existential threat of our time. You know, I moved to India when I was 15 after living in this country for 11 years when my parents came here for graduate school. And when I moved to India, my parents had to buy water. Every time I go to visit my parents or my in-laws in Hyderabad, India, we have to buy water that's you know, because you can't get it out of your tap. It changes your whole lifestyle. And for those of us who are used to opening a tap and taking a hot shower, or, you know, cooking with the water out of the tap, I think it's really important that we remember why, as an immigrant, I think it's really important that water is a basic human right in this country, and we need to make sure it continues to be, and that our children and future generations have access to it. One of the big things that I've also sought is, I live in a district that's in Oakland County, so I always look for ways to engage all my constituents on this issue of conservation, and also reach out to people across the aisle, something that Senator Chang has been really good at in finding common ground. It's something that she and I worked on before either of us ran for office. And so one of the things that I've been working on is there's an initiative called 30 by 30, which is to preserve and conserve 30% of our water, 30% of our land by 2030. And so one of my colleagues introduced a resolution to do that. I signed on to it, co-sponsored it. I also introduced a resolution to recognize and honor World Water Day, which is in March, March 21st. And so, March 22nd, it's in the late March. And so making sure that we honor and recognize water as an essential part of our state's heritage. We are the Great Lakes state for a reason. And so we have the world's largest freshwater ecosystem, and we should cherish it.
Liz, can you introduce some of the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I first just want to recognize both Senator Chang and Representative Kuppa for their extraordinary work and commitment as champions of both people and the Great Lakes. You know, to have leaders like them is what we need in this moment in history. And as they have both alluded to, in the past decade, we in Michigan, we sit in the heart of one of the most extraordinary regions on the planet. We have over 20% of the world's fresh surface water. And with that, we have an extraordinary duty to do something about it. We have also witnessed some of the most unbelievable and avoidable tragedies, notably the Flint lead crisis, the water shutoffs of over 140,000 households in Detroit and other communities across the state of Michigan, and the privatization threat from Nestle, which is extremely real and palpable. And these waters belong to all of us. And yet state policy currently is allowing in Michigan private for-profit corporations to extract the waters of the state and sell publicly owned water for profit. And it is this collision of crises that motivated our nonprofit, For Love of Water, we're a Great Lakes Water Law and Policy Center, to develop legislation that would bring these crises together, that would address both the sale of water for profit and the protection of drinking water and public health for new infrastructure funds. And we, back in 2018, we developed some model legislation called the Public Water Public Justice Act for this express purpose. And it's a comprehensive legal framework with public trust at its heart, which is embedded in Michigan's Constitution and its jurisprudence. And what the public trust says is that water is a public good. It belongs to all people, and it is held in public trust. And the state of Michigan, as our government, has a fiduciary responsibility to protect these paramount interests of our public waters in perpetuity. So it has this intergenerational equity that aligns with our need to protect our water and our climate for our children and future generations. And ultimately, this legislation will help to recalibrate Michigan's priorities on protecting water and its people. What's unique about the legislation is that it will affirm public ownership over water. And that means both surface and groundwater, because water is a cycle and protecting every arc of the cycle is critical. As you know, with climate change, we have rivers of water flowing in the sky because of the imbalance throughout the whole system. So we think that what's unique to this legislation, and it would be unique, in this nation actually, because it will assert public ownership over water and protect against commodification and private ownership of our public trust waters. We have done an initial analysis to economic analysis showing the revenue potential at being about approximately $250 million a year. And this is a way to address the water equity concerns, lead replacement, water affordability plans that continue to plague Michigan and its people.
Another issue that impacts our water system is, of course, pollution. Rep. Kuppa and Senator Chang, how have you addressed this issue in your capacity as legislators?
Well, there's a number of things. As I mentioned earlier, really concerned about some of the industrial sites along our waterways and really getting a better handle on what is the contamination that's there. And so I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. So, with Revere Copper, that site, it got a lot of attention because it had uranium on site during World War II as a part of the, the Manhattan Project. Thankfully, there was a lot of testing that was done, and uranium did not get into the water. However, it did raise a lot of questions and concerns, and there were other types of contaminants that did get into the water. So, I think one of the concerns is that we've got all these really old seawalls, really old docks that hardly ever get inspected. There's nothing in Michigan law that requires a regular inspection. Some cities may have some ordinances, but it's concerning. And so, our state needs to get a better handle on this. So one of the bills that we have is actually basically saying that the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy should have a statewide database, publicly available, transparent information about these sites and what's the history there, what type of contamination, when was the last inspection, and then also sort of identifying the risk level, high, medium, or low for potential issues there. A number of us mentioned climate change earlier. I think one of that also very much impacts this issue because we're talking about high water levels really around the country, but definitely in Detroit and in Michigan. And so when we have the combination of contaminated sites, high water, old infrastructure, it's a problem. It's a big problem because we don't want that contamination to get into the water. I have a few neighborhoods in my district that have flooding issues, and so just imagining all of the potential really terrible scenarios if you combined flooding or high water with contaminated sites. It's a number of problems waiting to happen. And so we really need to get better in front of it. And so I'm going to keep working on this issue because it's something that we really, really need to do to protect our drinking water and one of our most precious natural resources.
I think it's really important. We've given you a whole lot of things that we're doing, a whole lot of things that are happening that may be alarming, but there's always something that an individual can do. And I think that that's where Senator Chang and I started, is just by simply getting involved. So obviously you can control your own consumption of water, turn off the tap when you're brushing your teeth so you don't waste water. But also some of this more basic things like, reusing and recycling and choosing sustainable instead of choosing styrofoam because it's cheaper, use something that won't hurt our planet. Those kinds of things are basic, but also get involved. Visit Flow's website, forloveofwater.org. Volunteer with an organization in your own community. Volunteer in your local community at the local government level. Find out what your planning commission is doing. Here in Troy, we have a master plan that's going to be reevaluated. Find out, are we doing things as a city to be more sustainable? Because city buildings, government operations, are we being more at the most local level? Are we being more conservation based? And so volunteer for organizations like that do cleanups in your community, protecting the local watershed in your community. I'm sure that there's ways to find out where you can get involved. But I think that's something that everyone should do, because this is our planet, this is our state, these are our natural resources, and we, have to take ownership to preserve them.
Rep. Kuppa, Senator Chang, Director Kirkwood, thank you so much for joining and sharing with us all the great information concerning our most precious natural resource. For everyone who would like to get more information or get involved in protecting our water, please go to forloveofwater.org. Just click on the link in the program description. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.